All right, so we're starting 2 lines from the top on Man Bob. The Yichud Ayin veyesh of the type of the Yichud of Chochmah and Bina. This is properly defined, described as being the Mokoir, the source for his Havas Holiness, for the worlds to come into being. Me'ayin liyesh. Because there's an important point which I don't know if I made in the past. Probably did. Ayin and yesh are both imperative principles in any effect, in any creation, in any being. Since that nothing exists on its own, everything is a creation. Like the Rambam says, there's a Motzu Rishe Mamtzi Kol Nimtza. This Motzu Rishe is the truth of existence. Anything that is lacking the Motzu Rishon element does not have a real existence. It could be an imaginary thing, a Madama and so forth, but cannot be in the category of existence. And this Motzu Rishon this is a presence which does not come into existence. This is a fundamental reality. Being that's a fundamental reality, and it does not have parameters by which it comes into existence, therefore this is really Ayin, which means there is no definition to it, no way of grasping it and identifying it. Just as the Rambam points out, that our knowledge, awareness of Motzu Rishon precedes Chochmah. In order to have Chochmah, you must have first recognized that there is a Motzu Rishon. How do we know it? How do we recognize this? Not through a process of research, not a process of koiches chochmah. This is a knowledge that we gain automatically by having our neshama, by having our nefesh, and our life element. And from that flows that knowledge, that awareness. In other words, I want to conclude this statement. In other words, logically we would argue that if I see an object, I know that somebody put it there. Why? Because I have previously seen this spot without that object in there. Now the object is there. Do I know somebody put it in there? This is, so to speak, on the logical level. But if I had not seen that spot without the object, if I had seen the object always there, if had not encountered it prior to being there, then I would not know definitively that somebody put it there. Maybe it was there from inception. In response to this quote-unquote dilemma, we say that the principle of all knowledge, of all Chochmah, is that we first and foremost recognize at a much higher level than logic, something that we cannot prove logically, that in fact there is a first being, and that preceded all other existence. Although we have not really observed that situation where we see the first being without anything else. We come at the point where everything is there. Nonetheless, due to the truth of our neshama, the truth of our experience of life, this is our primary awareness. There's a first being from where everything comes from. And there's another inference over there, in the way the Rambam describes it, that it's me'amitis himotzei. Everything that comes to existence is actually representative of the truth of his presence. And something that is lacking, that element, the truth of his presence, is lacking presence.
One more time. Everything that's coming is representing the truth of his presence. And what was the second part there?
If something is lacking this principle, the representation of his presence, the truth of his presence is lacking presence, lacking existence. Like we said, we can imagine things that you imagine. Do they have an element of existence? None. Therefore, everything starts off from the state of Ayin, of this amitis himotzei. And then, clearly, the world per se is not amitis himotzei per se. It comes from amitis himotzei. It has an element of amitis himotzei, but it was then completely camouflaged and repackaged into a tangible metzius, identifiable metzius, which is called Ayin veyesh. The initial, and therefore all existence literally is a combination and interconnection of Ayin and yesh. If you have only yesh, you don't have anything. If you have Ayin, you don't have no world.
Wait, instead of it's lacking in the area of being representative, then it's lacking presence.
What?
If it's not representative of his
presence, then there's nothing, no presence.
Then it's lacking presence. But then we went on to say it's a combination of Ayin and veyesh. So that would seem to be, it has to be a little bit less Ayin so that it'll be a yesh.
Yeah. The Ayin is camouflaged, the Ayin is translated and brought down to the level where it can be identified, and this is called yesh. This is Chochmah and bina.
So, okay. So this setting, yesh, is where Ayin becomes identifiable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, okay.
That's when it becomes a yesh. This is what we say, that the moker ha'ilmus, moker, the source that makes his havus, the presence of worlds possible, is this union between Chochmah and bina. It's amazing that every time you mention it, we can go straight out to further and further, but we already discussed it from many angles. Okay, second line of member. Ach kol zeh hu rak michitzenius de Chochmah bina. However, this entire union and the effect of the union of Chochmah and bina, of Ayin and Yesh, which provides as a source for the Zavos of AyinBase, this is from the Chitzonius of Chochmah bina. This is the union at the Chitzonius level of Chochmah bina. What is Chitzonius level of Chochmah bina? Again, this is not terminology for sure is not new, but we really sense a difference. We always have to revisit it. So he explains the Mashenim Shaboseh. Why do we say that this is from Chitzonius Chochmah bina? It is due to the fact that which is involved, which is processed in this union, hu ha'ora levat, is only a ha'ora of Chochmah bina. Again, ha'ora, we have also discussed. Ha'ora means a resultant effect, not the essence, but the resultant effect of it. It's called ha'ora. V'zehu inyan zivug ruchni. And therefore this is the principle of zivug ruchni, a spiritual union, because spiritual union means that yes, there's a union between Chochmah and bina, but there is not a real presence, a real essence there. It is only a union at the conceptual level. Ha'ora levat. Shehu k'moy hashpoas haseichel al derech Moshe, which is something akin to hashpoas haseichel, to the bestowing of seichel, when the Rav is mashpia seichel to the Talmud. שאין השפוע עצמי מימוש השכל. השפוע השכל is not a hashpoa atzmis. It's not a hashpoa that represents the etzem of the seichel. Mimhus ha-seichel, from the very presence of the seichel itself. Canal, as we explained earlier. So similarly, ma shenimshach lechochmah bina, whatever it is that is involved in the hamshoch, in the uniting chochmah and bina, L'tzerech his havos o AyinBase, l'tzerech his havos amalochim, v'nivroim. So just as in Chochmah bina itself, what comes from Chochmah into bina is not a mahus, but only a chitzenius, a haor. Similarly, what is nimshim in Chochmah bina, l'tzerech his havos malochim v'nivroim. What comes from Chochmah bina for the purpose of bringing forth Malachim and Nivroim, Ein zeh mibchinas ha'atzmi shalahem. It is not from the atzmius of Chochmah bina. Ki im ha'or levad. It is only a ha'or from Chochmah bina that comes into Malachim and Nivroim. Therefore, it means that if his havos were exclusively limited to that which is the effect of the zivug of Chochmah and Bina, then the world would not be a true presence. It would be a presence, but on a ha'ora level. I have to give us a little bit of a handle when you come into this. What type of presence is a ha'ora levad? Is it present or is it not present? Essentially, a ha'ora means, and he said it's a ha'ora, it's a reflection of this truth. The principle, what's lacking in a reflection is that it is only a reflection and always remains a reflection, and should the source of the reflection be hidden, the reflection vanishes. That's not how oral about. On the other hand, similarly, if we should focus on the essence of which it is a reflection, then the reflection also vanishes. And I want to give us a little bit of a tangible illustration of this principle. We said many times that a human being, because he is a sikhli, he perceives things from a reality and a truth perspective. Therefore, when he perceives a path from point A to point B, in that perception of this path is included the base where this point A, where this path is defined. In other words, it's not a path exclusively as a path. That there is a broad reality. There's the whole earth and everything that sustains this path. But within that broad reality, he identified a certain path. But he's never oblivious to the broader reality. And he's always conscious that this path is actually identifying a narrow strip within a broader source, a broader reality. We demonstrated this with a tightrope walker and so forth. So that this path that he's walking on, even though it is a path, a defined path, he is not walking on the path does not exist due to its definition. The path is existing because of a greater truth, of a greater presence. But functionally, we've identified a certain path. This is like a ha'ora. And should we turn to see what is the reality of when this path is being identified, we lose sight of the path. Like we said in the case of the tightrope walker. But one of the pitfalls over there, but the hazard is, if he looks away from his narrow path and he sees what's supporting it, boom, he loses it. Because it doesn't have a reality. So even though it is really his havos, it is really a defined path, but it's only a ha'ora. And it does not exist, and into this ha'ora was given only the definition element rather than the essence of it. This is essentially what the Rebbe says, that the havos of the worlds as source in Chochmah bina would be only ha'ora, which means that it would continue to be totally dependent on the Chochmah bina for it to be and to have a presence. And should one actually identify with the Chochmah bina, then the ha'ora would cease to be. This is what the Rebbe is explaining. That the Nivroim and Malachim do not have an atzmiyus of the Chochmah bina, do not have a presence of their own. If they should turn away from their source, they cease to be. If they should focus on their source, they would cease to be. So we'll just go into the next principle here, a long discussion. V'hagam shenisbo eliyil, b'moshel. Although we explained earlier when we discussed the moshel, the mehashpos haseichel, in the moshel, seichel and hashpos haseichel. So we said, discussing the moshel, that from hashpos haseichel liyoisei ha'ora levad, being that the hashpor consists only a ha'ora, einoi mizhava mizeh mehu seichel eitzel hamakabel. That does not create the mehu seichel by the makabel. In other words, the makabel of seichel, he has to have seichel on his own. And if he does not really employ his own seichel, then the mashpia cannot possibly imbue him with seichel. Because it's only how this is how it is in the Moshe. V'kan, but here when we're talking about the Nimsha, it says when Chochmah bina created Nivroim and Malochim. So here, Harei me'ayichud the Chochmah bina. So here it's a different picture. That form, as a result of this union between Chochmah and bina, nizhava mehuz ha-nivroim imoichin u'midas. There is actual presence of Nivroim along with their own moichin and their own midas. So therefore there is a real presence over there. So these Nivroim that have their own moichin and have their own midas, how do we correlate that to the principle of being ha'or levad? And here we have to interrupt. And Mitchum tonight we're going to have another Thursday evening session. Have a great day.
It'll be philosophical.
Huh?
It'll be like last
Have a
week.
great day.
No, it'll be reality. We're living with reality. I don't know, I heard kind of in a delayed way, but I just read an email that Yitzchak was dismissed of everything. Yitzchak.
Ki